Call the December 15th, 2025 Polk City Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Roll call.
Here.
Hans. Van Alstine.
Here.
Vogel.
Here.
Olfest.
Here.
Triplett.
Here.
Lutnick.
Here.
Item number 3, approval of the agenda.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, approval of P and Z Commission meeting minutes for September 15th, 2025.
Make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
Van Alstine.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Olfest.
Yes.
Triplett.
Yes.
Lutnick.
Yes.
All right. Item 5, discussion of architectural design standards in commercial town square district.
So this is going to be a lot more open-ended than a lot of our discussions. What we're really looking for from tonight is kind of getting the process started. So back when we did the architectural updates for the high-density residential and multifamily homes, there was an expressed interest in modifying the CTS district to kind of shape what redevelopment and new development looks like in some of the potentially vacant lots and some of the buildings that could potentially redevelop in that area. So what I did is, as part of our memo, I put together 4 kind of talking points kind of to guide the conversation, but what we're really looking for is as much guidance as you guys have at this point, thoughts, feelings, whatever it may be to help us kind of guide research. Because I know in a lot of ways, downtown districts, the square, that kind of thing, it's probably one of the more important architectural standards that a community like Polk City can have, because it's kind of your community's identity. And so what are you guys looking for in that? Do you want something that's a really classic, like I grew up in Warren and Madison County, do you want a classic like Winterset Square where you've got the big tall storefronts, all brick, super old school looking? Do you want something that's a little more flexible? Do you want something that kind of more so mirrors the rest of your commercial districts? That's kind of where we're trying to land, get some feedback of what the commission would like to see, what their thoughts are, and then kind of steer our research towards communities that kind of mirror some of those characteristics that you guys are looking for. So with that, I'll open it up to thoughts, what you don't want, that kind of stuff. Is just sometimes knowing what you don't want is almost as important as knowing what you do want. So I would open that up for any thoughts or feelings you guys have.
Well, I can start, I guess. And I guess I like the classical look myself. I think, I don't think it would have to be all brick myself, but I think it should be at least 50% brick. I think glass fronts, windows, doors, more of an old style look was what I would like to see. The aluminum, I'd like to see, if they do aluminum and glass, something like dark browns or black, nothing colored, like no red, no green. The glass to be tinted bronze kind of glass, not colors, not reflective mirror look kind of thing. I think a mixture of brick, stone, the aluminum, like I said, or cut limestone would be good. But I would not want to see plastic or metal panels like the high-tech look to go with that classical look. Those, I think, would just give it a more permanent look and a more tie better with what we have now. So, I mean, some of what we do have now, there is some siding. I'm not real big on siding. I mean, I'd be more inclined with, there is some good siding out there, but not metal. So some mixture architecturally of some siding, but mainly brick, limestone, no precast, that type of thing, would be my thoughts. So.
I know I say this all the time, but I would love to see upper story housing. Like the 2-story type of building, encourage, even, I would say 3-story, but we don't have that quite a bit. But that type of, so that you have retail on the bottom and you have housing on top. If it's a deep enough building, you can also have housing in the far back, but just not in the, so that you can have that retail piece of it. I think any of the old school, Oskaloosa's down, square is phenomenal. That's even Albia's before the fire. I mean, there's so many really great
Yeah.
that have
Albia.
that. Yeah,
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Albia,
yeah.
thought about that. I agree with the 2-story, maybe 3 in some cases, but kind
Yeah.
of keep it not a 4-story, nothing beyond 3.
I was just
at
thinking,
the
like,
most.
if you had the 2-story, like, I know this is key in some districts, they have like a, like the 3rd floor is really like an outdoor venue itself type of thing, so
Yeah.
that you could have like a cool structure, so you have
Sure.
shade or some type of coverage, but, so that would be like the 3rd.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't want that prohibited, I guess, is.
I think I would echo the same comments. The classical 2-story would fit well. I really think the size of our square, I think 3-story might be a little much.
I agree.
Yeah, well, I don't think our square is big enough to have 3 stories around it. I think it'd dwarf it, but, the classical brick, glass, nothing real modern. I think we're a community that, like you said, Albia, Oskaloosa, some of those, I think those are some good ones. Even Perry has some nice buildings downtown, just the nice 2-story bricks. Get away from the residential type look of some of what we have today. Like you said, the siding, I think, wouldn't be favorable.
I would agree with that as well. Just a smaller bricks, although, yes, the cut limestone and as an accent would be a nice thing. And the siding and the facade, I would not be in favor of. And also the thought of the 3rd story, I think with the scale of our particular square would probably be a bit too much. It really comes down to what is the focal point of the square, and we really have 2 of them, and that's the bandstand and what I still kind of call City Hall, but I guess it's the museum. And, those two historical features aren't really geared towards a modern look. It's more of a historic look. If we got into 2-story housing, and before we get into 2-story housing, we need to solve the parking problem of our current ordinance in the town center, because West Des Moines and Valley Junction got into a huge issue with 2nd floor housing. And we don't want to repeat that mistake they made here. We need to learn by other communities' mistakes. So they were similar to us, where a building was not required to have off-street parking in their commercial district. That was more historic. They put in 2nd-story housing, and then nobody could park to go to the businesses and restaurants because all of the parking was taken by full-time residents. And so if we have that 2nd-story housing, given some of the small parcels we have, it's going to be difficult to accommodate the parking situations. We just need to solve that problem before we let that downtown housing happen. Also, something I've seen some communities do year-round is a row of white lights around the top of the facade all around their business district or square. I think that would be really nice in our community. And again, not just at Christmas time, but all around, have them all come on at the same time, so it's all hooked up together. It's not each building individually. It kind of brings a bit of continuity to the district.
I think if we're gonna have upstairs housing, I'd like to look at the traffic impact as well. Just being at that square, there's gonna be a lot of people going in and out of there. And I don't think it would be able to support it with that stop sign. I like the look of the district down in Ankeny, that kind of design, how it's laid out. Some of the small towns, thinking of Ute, maybe Denison, Mapleton, kind of a central area. I'd like to keep that green space, and if we did a third or second story, have that open air, kind of like the event venue at the district that has that open, maybe some green too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of in agreement with most of those. I think the only one too, I would go for at max a 2-story. I kind of agree with that, a 3rd story, just might feel like it just closes it off too much, but other than that, probably on board with all those ideas.
And something that the commission should be aware of is at the last council meeting, the city council did approve a contract with Snyder and Associates to prepare the 3rd Street corridor study, Town Square Master Plan, and West Bridge Road corridor study. And so as part of that, we will look at some concepting as far as infill goes. One thing we would look at is probably the lot that will be created when the north annex comes off of the old city hall. And we could look at something, and that's kind of what's driving some of the timing of this is, right, we want to look at some, because there's some infill development concepting as part of that study, and so we want to look at how that fits in, and we want to make sure that, we don't want to show this big modern building if that's not what the commission or the community wants. So that's kind of what's driving some of the timing of this. And then the other piece that's part of that too is we will look at the 3rd and Broadway intersection again, as well as parking and circulation around the square. Because some of the commissioners may remember when the Iowa Development Board, is that what it was called? They came in and did your town square thing?
IEDA.
Yeah, IEDA came in and did some of the town square study and put some of those concepts together. One of the things that they really gravitated towards was potentially making Van Dorn and Second one way around the square. So that will be something that I think at some point we'll look at as part of that town square master plan as well, which may help to kind of facilitate some of the things. I'm super familiar with like the downtown area in Iowa City, and right before I was in school, they shifted a bunch of those streets to be one ways. And that what they were able to do is they were then able to take advantage of a widened parking or a widened sidewalk area by narrowing that street down. And now they have seasonal outdoor seating that is in the public right of way that those businesses use. So that was one of the things that IEDA kind of gravitated towards. So just so you guys are aware, that is something that we're working through. It'll be over the next calendar year, but that is something that's on the docket right now. Any final thoughts on the CTS stuff?
Would it be possible to not have hard transitions either? I'm thinking of the Ames downtown Main Street, where they go from a lot of brick to just a random inlay of wood or stone, and it just kind of looks a little tacky, so those soft facades.
I do like your lighting comment too, Ron. I think that always looks kind of sharp when you see it.
You had mentioned the one-way, using Van Dorn and having it go around the square. Just a thought I had a while ago was doing the one-way, but instead of going that direction, having Fourth be one-way south. So actually take it on this side of this building. And then as opposed to having on the south end of that a square corner to bring it back to Third, the southbound traffic, actually utilizing the lot that the city already owns to have a more gradual diagonal come across. So it would probably have some sort of a square on the north end to get over to the north or to the southbound, but on the south end would have a new road, one-way road constructed diagonally through that lot, just as a way to kind of move, to get less traffic on Third, again, making Third one way.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that'll be part of the 3rd Street corridor study. We're gonna investigate several different options. We're gonna set that up to kind of prime the city, for funding opportunities. And so as part of that, the funding or the grant applications really like to see an alternatives analysis. So we'll come up with at least a couple concepts and kind of land where we think we want to land on that. Because ultimately, Third Street is going to be the spine of everything. I mean, if Third Street ceases to function, the community as a whole really does. So that's going to be a hugely important study that we're going to complete there. I kind of mentioned this with our next topic, but something that kind of comes to mind as well is, so right now, the way that the zoning code is set up is you have a CTS district and then you have a C1 district, where C1 is meant to be kind of a blanket transitionary district between different uses. So the idea being, so from Town Square to the residential to the west, you've got a C1 belt that wraps the square. It's transitional. The idea being, if for whatever reason, a portion of like the area right behind Bridge Road, so to the north, if that were to ever redevelop, which given a lot of that stuff's new enough that we're a long ways away from that, were to redevelop, we would probably recommend that being C1 as well, being a transitionary period or a transitionary zone where you kind of get a little bit of both and you make those transitions a lot less hard. How would the commission feel about doing some sort of overlay district surrounding the CTS zoning district as a means to transition from maybe a higher architectural standard on the square, or a very specific architectural standard on the square, to maybe into other districts? And I guess, does the commission as a whole understand the concept of an overlay district? Let's start there. Overlay districts? Yes, you understand? No, you don't.
I don't, you just give them a
Okay.
overview.
Overlay districts are basically, you've got an underlying district, but then you overlay it with a very specific band or very specific requirements for a very specific area. The idea being, you don't have to necessarily then have, 18 zoning districts. You can still keep with your 8 or 9 that you have in your zoning code, but then you overlay for specific things. So the idea being, you would have an overlay district that surrounds the square. As maybe 126th Avenue to the north develops, maybe you do an overlay district there because you want a specific look out there, that kind of stuff. Or you want to specifically restrict certain areas with certain uses. And the thinking there, and the reason I'm bringing that up, and it's something that we don't have to really detail at this point, but that might be the next step too, is once we feel really good about the requirements we have for the CTS district, what's the next ring out? To kind of clean up that next ring, and where does the CTS district ultimately land in terms of, do you want to keep the CTS district facing onto the square? Or are you willing to say the CTS district is now this square, this block, and the next block, or something like that? That's something that I think I'd like to prime the commission to think about, particularly the opportunities as it comes to, as you run out of space on the square, do you want your town square district to extend? So don't need a lot of feedback on that tonight, but something to think about as we move through this process of, long-term thinking of, what do we want the square to look like, but then what do we want that next ring to look like as well? So.
And as we look at the, what I call the northeast and south, there's already some non-residential uses in that next block out. To the west, we don't really have anything as yet.
Right. But that ultimately is one of the things that what we want to think about too, is if you do some sort of overlay district, well, then you can kind of control the redevelopment of that next ring as well. To be really particular to, maybe it's supporting uses and roles in terms of the square. Maybe that's where you get your walk-up 2-story apartment kind of situations that face onto the street, and then you got parking behind it that also serves as a supplementary to the square. Like, that's an example of something that you could really drive home with some sort of overlay district. So just something to think about. Again, that's probably 3 steps down the road, but as we're going through some of this stuff, we just want to make sure that we're doing that long-term thinking. So any last comments on CTS before we move to the next thing?
Just one note that I had forgotten to mention, I don't know if I like it or not, but I just want to bring it up, the thought of canvas awnings on these 2-story brick buildings. Do we like a canvas awning that's non-illuminated, so not anything that's backlit from underneath, but, you know, it's a way to soften a 2-story building a bit. It's hard to force maintenance on people, and so that's the only downside. Other than that, I tend to like them.
Want to choose to restrict the colors or
Yeah, oh,
the
yeah.
textures, or I mean, there's a,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
or not.
yeah. I don't think we want circus stripes.
Because I think ultimately where I go with that, Ron, and kind of going back to what Doug said, is if you're really wanting those neutral, darker, non-extravagant tones, those are probably also going to be some of the tones that are also that much more susceptible to sun fading, sun rotting, long-term maintenance concerns too.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a good answer for that.
Okay.
Because I tend to agree. I like the look of them. I think it really lends itself to kind of that same look. It's just, you know, how do you,
How does it look 10 years down the road?
right? And then how do you go to enforce it? That would be the other thing.
Yeah, personally, I think might detract a little from the classical look we're talking about. I mean, I like them on certain applications, but I'm just trying to envision like downtown Albia with any of those. You know, you just don't see them. I'm not sure. Some people like to put lettering on them. I mean, you'd really have to be very specific, I think. I'm not saying I'm against it totally, but my first reaction would be no.
Okay.
But
I would like to see some ordinances on the distance, how far they expand out. Because either I see them too short, they don't cover anything, or they're medium and they create ice on the sidewalks, or they're too long and then you have pillars posting out, or just hazards of various types.
Okay.
And then also ordinances on if that's under your awnings classified as part of your business. So if people start putting outdoor seating on that front sidewalk or anything like that too.
Okay. Okay. Only other question I had is, so Doug mentioned 50+% brick. Is there a number the commission likes as far as a brick proportion? I'll remind you that right now, your C2 district is 60% facing a right-of-way, 50% all other sides. And then your industrial is, I think, 50-40. I'm recalling the changes we made correctly. But so that kind of gives you an idea of where you're at. My head initially probably went to the 80% range, if not 100%, but I don't want to steer, I'm trying to avoid steering the commission towards a certain number, a certain
a
percentage.
question on that, when we count square footage of brick, are we counting the actual brick surface, or are we counting, when I said that, I'm thinking there's probably 30% glass, doors, windows.
So
50% brick, then brings it up to 80% of some.
glazing perpendicular to the ground is not counted in that proportion. So it would be, the percentage would be based purely on the non-glass frontage.
Okay.
So so if you would like to incentivize having more glass, I mean, could that be a counter to them? I mean, help me understand that part.
I mean, the thing is you could dictate proportions of any material. So if you're looking for a very prescriptive look, you could say exclusive of doors, you need to be 30% glass and 70% brick. And that is total frontage exclusive of just the door openings. Or you could do, so the way your commercial ordinance is written right now is it's exclusive of glazing. So it's any vertical glass material. So your doors technically count against you, but the windows don't. So that's why you end up in a situation where you end up with big windows on some of these businesses because they don't want to, they only want to do 60% of the, but it's exclusive of that glass. So the thing is if there's a very specific look you want, you can dictate it that way. You just have to remember that the more requirements you put in, the more uniform your buildings are going to look if you want variety, and then B, the harder it's going to be for somebody to really manipulate that code to make the building their own or to make it pencil out or whatever it may be. So that's the edge we have to walk on, is being too prescriptive as to not promote development in your town square, but then also make sure that you're getting the look you want.
I'd prefer anything above 50%, just so you don't see the other 50 when I tend to look at buildings. It looks equal to me and I don't like that, it's disproportionate. So 70%.
70.
I was thinking 75 or 80. I've seen a lot of brick buildings that will have, like above the first floor windows and doors will have a panel of stucco or something, a long rectangle where their sign is then put on top of that. And where if that would be brick behind the sign or the lettering, they probably wouldn't be able to read the lettering. So I would understand why you would want not to be 100% brick. But I agree, I think it needs to be a very high number for the facade facing the square.
What about on the sides there? When you think about, there's a couple of them that you see a lot of the side of the building.
I think that's about 60% to 70 as well, minimum. Just so I'm not getting weird. I think that it would have to be proportional to whatever the front facing is. So I wouldn't want to do a drastic change from 80% down to 60%. I'd like to see it 70 to 80.
As it develops, it may not be a whole lot of sides visible, but I agree with you, if it is visible, then you'd have to have a high percent there as well. And I was trying to leave room in there I like limestone trim and limestone panels, and I don't know if that would, I know those are pricey too, but I was trying to leave some percentage in there for something like that. I don't like stucco, I don't like that ephes, I don't like, cause that's really, if they don't maintain it, it falls apart real quickly. So, yeah, something like that. Deanna's got a picture of some samples of limestone and brick mixed.
Instead of using the word facade, would street facing be a better word? So that if you're a corner lot, that would really apply to both.
Well, and we could write it too, because you're right in that the idea of the CTS district is you have 0 setbacks. So the idea is that these buildings are like sandwiched on top of each other, so you could do a visibility component too. Where you basically put it on the developer's architect of, hey, demonstrate that I can't see it, and you can use whatever material you'd like behind there, but you have to demonstrate to me that you can't see it.
Right,
And then we're gonna check that when you build it.
yeah.
So then at what point is all this triggered? On an existing building on the square,
So the way Polk City Code reads right now, 50% of your valuation triggers full compliance with the city code. Anything under that, the way that we administer it is you cannot create any additional nonconformities. You can't make any of your existing nonconformities worse, and we would like to see effort made towards bringing it further into compliance. So the example I would give is Nan Boland's building just east of the square. She had to put several things in to meet ADA requirements, and then she had to submit a site plan where basically she said, I am either meeting the code requirements or I have a deferral agreement that in 5 years I will meet the deferral or the code requirements if I haven't torn the building down and rebuilt. So that's the trigger point right now in city code is 50% of the valuation, and building code specifically defines how you determine the valuation. was looking, okay, so, kind of going back to the stucco comment, not to say that the way, and this is the old version that isn't modified, but we used a lot of the same criteria. So stucco is not an acceptable alternative to brick and stone. So that would be where that's what I wanted to confirm.
Your 20% could be stucco.
Yeah, something like that.
Glazing.
Yeah. So I'm hearing 70 to 80% proportional on the sides, and then, we will kind of look at some language to see if there's a way that we can do it restricted to visibility, because I think that makes the town square district a lot more developable if it's restricted to what you can see. And if it's right next to another building, you can't see it, we don't have to administer against it. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Okay?
Okay.
So what do you do in a scenario like the Pocket Park there where we've got the mural that's an exposed building side?
And see, that's where we would have to really investigate the language.
Yeah,
Because you're right, there's gonna be because right now, what we define as visible from like an HVAC screening standpoint is you stand at the right of way, you're 6 foot tall, can you see it?
right.
So how do we go about defining it? Because, you stay in dead center of that pocket park where you can see both walls all the way back.
Right.
But if you stand at the front door of Fenders, can you see the whole thing? I don't think you can, so. Yeah, I think that's the language we'll have to really investigate and look into.
Yeah, how that all works out. Because I think the mural's been a nice, addition there. And is that something we want to rule out, or is it,
Right.
I think that has been done really well right there.
Yeah. Great use of a small space. And
Yeah.
Something along the lines of non-definable areas, looking at, because we can define that, but an alleyway you can't really define as something.
I think the other thing too, as we look at an overlay district that would blend the two, there's always the comment that we will hear, sometimes justified, sometimes not, but the cost to develop in town, and we want that development to happen, we want it to happen in a certain way, but it'll be interesting, your guys' input too, on how big of a strain on a development can take before some of that just goes away and it doesn't develop, right?
True.
Right. I think an overlay district is something we really need to look at and
Yeah.
really define the parameters of what we want the square to look like.
Right.
And then start to relax it as you move out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are we on the back of the building right now? As we look at this?
Cold.
Well, right now, the way like if you look at any commercial structure, if it basically occupies the whole structure, if it's facing a public street, it would meet that 60%. I think you're probably talking specifically about the south side of the square. Is that an alley?
Define south side for me.
Right, it's kind of crooked, but behind Papa's, the backside of that, so.
Yeah, I was thinking there too, and then on the others behind like Rising Sun, is that a,
I just,
Alley, I know that because the city just repaved it.
yeah.
so how's that defined right now?
Well, I think the way it would be defined is that is a publicly owned right of way, so it would probably meet the street frontage requirement.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to look at from a cost standpoint, as you look at from developers. We still want it to be obviously aesthetically pleasing, but backing off some of that hard, surface requirement, cause it does get cost prohibitive.
Right.
So I think that's something we probably wanna look at it, what could we do there to be more cost effective for developers when they're coming in and trying to develop?
Well, and existing building owners too, for, at the point they ever try to sell their business.
Sell
Yeah.
or remodel. Right.
I did like when we had the dollar store discussion, Dollar General, putting some kind of fencing around or hiding that. Take that as an acceptable, a wooden fence paneling up above my height.
And when we talk about the two-story, is that allowed but not required? Or are we saying if it is demoed and rebuilt, it,
Well, and that, I think that ultimately becomes the question, because the more requirements you put on something,
right?
the more niche you're making it.
And I think that look is good. I think all of that is good, but when you talk to developers about trying to create that, it doesn't seem like a super feasible
Yeah.
model. Like you don't see a lot of people jump
Yeah,
on it.
not unless a whole quarter block
Right.
develops and.
Or if
at
it's
once,
somehow
it's not gonna make any
incentivized
sense.
to do that too, but.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome.
Yeah, I love the thought.
I
of
love
it.
the look and I wish we had it,
To the limits.
from way back when, but, it
And when you
would be
look at some
tough.
of those city squares that we mentioned and, around the state, those buildings are deep.
They are.
And
Yeah.
so when they have, the two stories, they have a lot of square footage on that second floor to be able to justify the stairs and, space for, allocated to all of that, where around our square, they're pretty shallow.
Yeah, I don't know, just thoughts, but.
Yeah, typically, that's how you get it to cash flow though, right? For some of the developers is when you have upper story housing, is that kind of stabilizes and typically that's what it costs for that mortgage typically. And then what you have on the bottom is gravy, if you will. So, but if you're gonna build new, I think encouraging, I guess to maybe really get it to pencil out, you're probably gonna need at least half a block in Polk City to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you really would.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna do what they need to do.
And I think that maybe is what's leading me towards the thought of like an overlay district, if that's really what we want, is that downtown residential stuff. Maybe it makes more sense as some of the areas surrounding the square get a little older. Is it more likely that somebody can come and snatch up a half block, a full block, and develop it in
Demo it
that
and then
manner?
rebuild.
Yeah.
Probably seems more likely, but.
Yeah.
But you could consider, the other thing that you could do is if you like that tall brick look, you could tell them that your facade can be no shorter than 15 feet or whatever that number is, where you almost simulate 1.5 to 2 stories.
Well, on our facades out here, they're taller than what the building is, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that trying to do
Yep,
what you're getting at?
yep.
Yeah.
But you could dictate that. We can look and see if there's language in other codes as far as that's concerned too. Okay, we'll move on to the next one here. Again, very abstract, so. But this one pertains particularly to, so as the commission's likely aware, Polk City is currently working on the final design for phase 1 of the Polk City Regional Trail, 57-acre regional trail, or not regional park. Primarily focused around sports complexes, so soccer fields, baseball fields, softball fields, pickleball court, dog park, splash pad, playgrounds, think Prairie Ridge Sports Complex, things like that. In our industry, what we've seen is these sports-focused regional parks and these sports-focused park facilities present a huge opportunity to cities who take advantage of them in terms of commercial growth and just general economic growth in the immediate area surrounding those facilities. What we wanted to talk about with you tonight is we included the current future land use plan. And before we dug too deep into what we think the best approach is, where to take the best advantage of the regional park, all those kinds of things, is does the commission have strong feelings about something? In terms of, do you hate the idea of Northside Drive being a commercial district? Do you love the idea of having commercial immediately north of Big Creek Commons? I don't want to steer you in any particular direction, but but those are kind of the examples of the things that we want to know is there a place that you think makes a lot of sense to revamp the way we have our future land use set up? Is there a place where you think it's a terrible, terrible idea to make a modification to for one reason or another? Almost, to be honest with you, I'm almost leaning on you more as Polk City residents than commission members in terms of the experiences you have, the things you want to avoid, and the kinds of characteristics that you want to see around that regional park facility.
Just something I would not like to see that I've always considered a bridge too far for me. And that is, if there is some single-family residential and those homes are already built and the land behind them or adjacent to them is undeveloped and currently residential or was residential when it was built, I am against converting that adjacent land to commercial. So a good example of that would be, where the new storage area is going in, north. As you go east on that road, there's already existing residential. So I would be against putting commercial adjacent to that existing residential to the north. It would need some sort of buffer more than just the commercial standard buffer. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I want to protect people who bought their homes and
Yeah.
it was zoned residential behind them or was showing residential on the land use plan.
I provide some extra context for you tonight on this topic. The city's been approached by a few different developers who have expressed interest in developing some sort of commercial amenity near the regional park. And we've had long conversations with those developers about what that would entail and that it would require them to be in a commercial or an industrial zoning district. And I think that is really kind of why we're wanting to have this conversation with you tonight, because if you look at the city's future land use plan, there's not a lot of commercial and industrial zoning districts near the regional park. And I think we are going to continue to have this brought up to us by interested developers. So I want to provide that little bit of additional information for you as we're talking this through tonight. Do you have any questions about what's been proposed or what's been asked of the city so far? I'll just share with you. Let me just continue to go on. So we've been approached about a rec facility, like an indoor rec facility near the regional park. That seems to be the biggest interest. I think someone's looking at it as an opportunity where there's going to be outdoor facilities at the park. Indoor rec facilities are a very big thing. They're becoming more and more popular. You're seeing them pop up all over. So I would say that's the one that we've been inquired about. I will not be surprised if somebody wants to start having conversations with us about restaurants. You see restaurants typically in the near proximity to these regional park facilities, indoor rec facilities, all across the metro, wherever you go. So I think we're just really trying to get ahead of this and have this conversation to see how you all feel about this and if you're interested in possibly making any changes to the future land use plan.
Yeah, I think having, spent a lot of time at facilities like that, it's kind of our loss if we aren't somehow structuring it to take advantage of these opportunities in between Grimes and Ankeny. We'll lose people to those locations where we could do that and also build off of the bike trail, that proves a lot. We don't want to take anything away from the square, but as we grow, we will have a lot of more need, I believe. Like when you look at the square on an average, right now it's pretty packed. And so even people that would be here for things like that, if it progressed, would need other avenues, and we could use some commercial activity, right? So I think it's worth looking at. I do agree with Ron on a lot of I don't wanna put it in somebody's backyard that's built and has an expectation, and even if you would change where somebody has platted, like there'd have to be conversations there, so it needs to be the right fit, but I think it's worth looking at.
And the way the park is located, really three sides of the park are restricted by creeks, residential housing, school property. So really, north is the only direction you can go. On North Side Drive, we already have commercial further to the east, which is about as close as it could be. On North Side Drive, we could extend that a little further west, but, you know, we have the other big green blob there that we are kind of needing to buffer around as well, to the east. And so really, north is the only direction that it could go. And from a traffic flow perspective, I'm not sure how much of the traffic to the regional park is going to come in and out from the north. And that's where, a business would wanna, a restaurant type business would want to be located anyways where the traffic flow is. A rec park would be different because it would almost be its own hub. Whereas it's not necessarily as dependent on traffic flow. But I think most of us who on this commission have always wanted more commercial in our city and wanting to diversify our tax base. So I am more than open to look at extending, commercial further south there and closer. But those homes that are already built on that north side of the park or northwest corner of the park, I would like to see a street of attached townhomes north of them or something before the commercial would start.
Right.
There's the red line there, I guess. I think that's, on the north side of the park.
Yeah, that would be corporate
So
limits.
that's where those homes back to currently. And so north of that red line, like a row of attached townhomes or something that would act as a buffer for those folks who bought their home expecting something different behind it. And it's not a case of not doing their homework. If they had done their homework, they would see that it was expected to be single-family residential. So it's not a case of, something was zoned commercial behind them and it's always been a grassy field and they thought it would always be a grassy field. This is a case where if they did their homework, they would have that expectation.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
For us to try to come back with a few opportunities for reconsideration. I think we understand what you're trying to say tonight is that you're open to it as long as it doesn't abut existing
Yes.
single family.
Correct.
Okay.
Not only open to it, would encourage it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think too, if probably the zoning map, if you could overlay like a current aerial over it, so you can kind of,
See it easier.
yeah, picture where the existing houses are, where,
That would be helpful.
That whole area to the north with the high density residential and light industrial, I don't think we were ever expecting that to exactly develop as that. We kind of always thought it was going to be shuffled around in some way, shape, or form. And so, Polk City is not at a loss for single-family housing. And so getting more diversity would be a great thing in our land ownership. Not only just adding more commercial and industrial, but also more higher density residential. I'm gonna say something that's probably unpopular, but I'll say it anyway. About a year ago when the Des Moines Register came out with the study that showed Polk City, I think, with the highest median income in the state. I was a little offended by that, in that I thought it spoke to the lack of residential diversity opportunities that we had. Polk City has tripled in size in the short time that I've lived here. And it just showed how new all of our residences are and how little opportunity there is for someone to come here starting out. And that gets back to the need for more diversity in housing. We can't build older homes here, clearly. And so the only opportunity we have is, through higher density residential.
Yeah. I think that's part of that economic development puzzle too. If you want restaurants, you want employees, if they don't live here, have the opportunity to live here, they're probably going to one of our neighboring communities, right? Where there's more opportunities, so.
And just so the commission's aware, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but the Hale property, there is a required buffer. So there, we do have some
We have
limitations.
some new folks. Can you maybe show that on the map and
Yes, I can.
explain it a little bit more?
You sure you want me to do that? Might cause panic. So, if I can get my mouse to work. Right here is the Hale investment property. I'm gonna scroll in one more time. And what that is it is Quick Supply Company, who is a provider and seller of explosive products. Essentially what that storage facility is it is low-risk explosive storage. Basically what the property owners have told us is they visit the site once or twice a week, load their materials, and they sell them to quarries. We just had a meeting with them a couple weeks ago, and he told us that if you shoot one of those blast packs, it will not explode. So it's very, very low risk from their perspective, but they are held to certain ATF rules and regulations in terms of how far they can be from any other vertical structure. We did ask the question of when the city does eventually need to extend a sewer across the property. That's not going to impact their operation, but any vertical development within that buffer zone would. That is purely dictated by the amount of explosive that is stored on that facility. And so what we're going to do is all of these changes would be based on being good neighbors to these folks in terms of minding that buffer zone and understanding the requirements that they have and understanding full well that if we make big grandiose plans on their property, the chances of it happening in the next 15 to 20 years, probably pretty low. So that's one of the other things that we're kind of contending with. So just so the commission knows, we're not necessarily ignoring that property. It's just, it possesses a lot of challenges that some other properties don't. So
The portion of their property that goes down to Northside Drive, is that part of the required buffer, or is that just on reserve for?
basically what they told us is Big Creek Commons over here is more or less like I think it's a little over the required buffer. So from this property line over to the actual storage, which is to the right as you go in the driveway, that's more or less the buffer they have. So there is a non-zero chance that if they wanted to, they could sell off a portion of this. It becomes exceedingly difficult to split land in that manner. It also becomes exceedingly difficult to plan for things in that manner, because that's a really good way to kind of work around some of the requirements that the city has, particularly as it relates to trip generation. The further you cut land down, the less likely you are to trigger a traffic impact study, the more likely you are to have issues with existing roadways. So that's some of the complications that come from that. But what I can show you is, so you can kind of see where those facilities are. You've got a whole parcel up here. You've got a parcel here. This was actually split out, I think. Yeah. So that obviously does not lie in their buffer. So there is a potential for a strip of commercial to happen along here, obviously, because they've allowed that to be split off at some point. So we'll look at that.
So my question was more on the south side.
Oh,
Yeah, where it's touching, north side.
yeah, so basically what they told us is you take this storage facility and you offset it by whatever the distance is. So there is a portion, but again, I think, yeah, this has been split off and that has been split off. So I think there would be an opportunity potentially to work across some of that. The thing's gonna be is we just have to be mindful of, you can't cut off a property, you can't landlock a property. So how does that look, short-term, long-term? How do we facilitate that? So, we've got a planner in our office that's very, very familiar with this. For some reason, she's actually run into another one of these facilities in one of the other communities she worked in. So, we'll kind of work through this and we'll kind of put together some options for you to consider at a future meeting. Right, I think that's good direction. We'll kind of be mindful of transitionary zones and then where can we add commercial? I think that makes a lot of sense, so. Any final thoughts? Okay, that's all we had.
All right. Item 7, reports and particulars. Council liaison.
Good evening.
How are you?
Hey, in consideration of time, I do have a few things I want to go over. To continue on what Travis said, Travis keep me honest, but we did approve last week the 3rd Street corridor study. I know it's something I'm personally kind of excited about. It goes from Hub all the way down the south side, includes town center. We also were able to get some funding with the state. So with that, we were able to include Bridge Road in that study. So we're looking to start that next year and have it hopefully completed by the end of the year or early 27. Really good strategic study for us to kind of understand what we're going to be looking at in the next several years. One thing, if you haven't heard, we approved a sidewalk repair program. So that was based off of, I'll let Chelsea keep me honest because I'll probably mess it up here, but in 23, the Iowa Supreme Court found that even though abutting property owners are responsible for repairing their sidewalks, the city is still liable for any injuries. So to get ahead of that, I know staff this year went out and did kind of a inventory of sidewalks in disrepair based on a grade, and we found a certain amount of them, and we're going to implement a repair program next year. So we're going to give people between 120 days and a year that repair, depending on their how severe the damage is that needs to be done. There's going to be some opportunities depending on what their capabilities are from funding. There's going to be some opportunities. So more to come on that.
So, just a quick question. If they don't repair it, then can the city repair it and assess their property, or how does that work?
Yes.
Is that how that works? I mean, I was in West Des Moines 30 years ago and got into stuff like that. So I mean, that seems fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, depending on, don't quote me on the price here, but it's probably, a few $100s.
A panel.
Panel, thank you, Travis. A few $100s per panel. Again, there's economies in the scale. A lot of people are doing it at the same time. So again, more to come on that. One of the things I'm really excited about is Snyder came and gave us a presentation on a preliminary drawing or layout of the regional park. Pretty exciting, like we talked about. We're going to have soccer fields. We're going to have the parking. We're going to have, I don't know the technical term, but a place for softball or baseball, right?
It's called a
Practice quad.
Practice quad. Again, this is all kind of phase 1 to be able to, the biggest need was to be able to have more soccer fields available for our community. We're looking to probably approve that and move forward with that sometime Q1, correct?
Yep.
And if everything lines up and the moon and the stars line up, where they said maybe sometime in the fall of '27, we'll have something available for. Pretty excited where our cities came in 12, 13 months from voting down the referendum to right now. So pretty excited about that. The last big thing I just want to say, I think everybody knows, unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to two city council members last week, Jeff Walters and Mandy Vogel. I both of them pretty extensively. They've really made my first 2 years a lot easier than I anticipated, just being able to have their counsel. So I really wanted to echo my thanks for those two individuals. We are welcoming back Dave Dvorak, who had, I think he had 16 years around there, previous council experience. And then we're welcoming James Hill. So both of those two individuals will be starting in January.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the highlights, so.
Awesome. Any questions?
Is the new water tower functional or not yet?
So I believe it's scheduled to come online sometime in late spring, is that correct?
May 2026.
Okay. Beautiful,
Yeah.
It is.
nice.
This might be an aside for the park, but is there any way we can look at possibly doing something like a little RC park included in there or anything like that?
So again, this is phase one, right? I know Travis alluded to, there's a lot of additional things that we want to do in the years to come. So it's all about priority and funding and trying to figure out how to allocate that. I would encourage, the opportunities that we have to have more commercial entities come. There's going to be more ways to be able to look for additional funding. I would recommend any sort of things like that. Go to the Parks Commission, start there. Jason, Parks Commission, right? Okay, perfect.
That message along as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
City manager, comments?
The only thing I have is welcome Susan Lawton. Susan is our city clerk. We hired her in September. She's been a great addition. So this is her first planning and zoning meeting she's been to.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you. Staff, comments? Would you like to say anything?
It was easy.
They're all that way. So, almost. Commission comments? All right. Do we have to motion to adjourn or do we just go?
You can say, no, you don't have to. Well, I don't
Well,
know.
we are.
I'll second.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. I said one today they didn't. They just, that was the dead.